I knew my marriage was over 3 days before my wife kissed me goodbye and told me she loved me. The strange part is, she probably meant it when she said it. That's what nobody tells you about betrayal. People think cheating starts with hotel rooms and lipstick stains and dramatic late-night confessions, but real betrayal begins quietly. It begins in small disappearances, in delayed replies, in smiles that no longer reach the eyes, in tiny moments your instincts notice long before your heart is ready to admit the truth. For me, it started on a rainy Thursday evening at exactly 6:14 p.m. I remember the time because the microwave clock was glowing behind my wife's phone when my entire life cracked open. I was standing in the kitchen making pasta while Elena was upstairs taking a shower. Or at least that's what she said she was doing. The windows fogged from the boiling water, soft jazz played from the speaker near the fridge, and everything looked painfully normal. That's the cruel thing about life-changing moments. The world doesn't warn you before it destroys you. It keeps moving like nothing happened. My phone buzzed beside the stove, and I smiled automatically, because Elena used to text me constantly, even from the next room. She'd send dumb selfies or ask me to bring her tea upstairs or text "miss you" while I was literally 10 feet away. I thought it would be one of those messages. Instead, I saw an unknown number and a single audio file, 9 seconds long. I almost ignored it. God, I wish I had. I pressed play absent-mindedly while stirring the pasta sauce, and at first there was only static and soft music in the background. Then a man laughed quietly, not loudly, not nervously, comfortably, like someone relaxed in a moment he belonged in. Then Eleanor spoke, and the second I heard her voice, something inside my chest tightened so violently it physically hurt. She sounded soft, breathless, intimate in a way I hadn't heard in months. "He still believes everything I say," she whispered. Then silence. Then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. The recording ended. That was it. 9 seconds. 9 seconds that turned 11 years of marriage into something unrecognizable. I stood frozen while the sauce burned slowly in the pan beside me. I replayed the audio again immediately because my brain refused to process it the first time, then again, and again. Every replay felt worse. Her voice sank deeper into my ribs like broken glass. He still believes everything I say. Upstairs, the shower turned off, and panic exploded through me. I locked my phone so quickly I nearly dropped it. My heart slammed against my ribs hard enough to make me dizzy. A minute later, Elena walked downstairs, wearing one of my old college t-shirts, her damp hair falling over one shoulder, smelling like vanilla shampoo and steam. Beautiful. That's the sickest part of the whole story. Even after hearing the recording, even after realizing another man existed somewhere inside our marriage, she was still beautiful to me. She smiled sleepily and said, "Something smells good," like nothing had happened. Like my entire world wasn't lying dead on the kitchen floor between us. I stared at her too long because she tilted her head slightly and asked, "You okay?" I realized I hadn't answered. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just tired." My voice sounded wrong, thin, unfamiliar, but she either didn't notice or pretended not to. She walked over and wrapped her arms around my waist, resting her cheek against my chest, and I nearly flinched because one horrifying thought slammed into me so hard it made me nauseous. Had she touched him today too? Had those same hands been on someone else, hours earlier, while I stood here cooking dinner like a loyal idiot? She looked up at me and smiled softly, and suddenly I couldn't breathe, because I realized I no longer knew what was real. That night I didn't sleep at all. Eleanor curled against me like always, one hand resting lightly on my stomach, while I stared into the darkness, replaying every moment of the last year. Suddenly everything looked suspicious. The work dinners, the girls' weekends, the sudden interest in Pilates classes, the expensive perfume she started wearing again after years of barely touching makeup. Tiny moments I ignored because trust blinds you. That's what trust really is. Voluntary blindness. Around 3 a.m., Elena shifted beside me and mumbled something in her sleep. I turned and looked at her face, illuminated faintly by streetlight through the curtains, and for one dangerous second I almost convinced myself I imagined everything. Maybe the audio was fake. Maybe someone was messing with me. Maybe there was another explanation. Then I heard her whisper a name in her sleep that wasn't mine. Adrian. I stopped, breathing entirely. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye before work and told me not to forget dinner with her sister on Saturday. I nodded automatically. While holding coffee, I suddenly couldn't drink. Then she left, and the second the front door shut behind her, I collapsed onto the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. I didn't scream or throw things or punch walls. I just sat there staring at the cabinets while the coffee machine dripped slowly in the background. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe an hour. Maybe longer. Pain changes time. Eventually I stood up, grabbed my keys, and drove nowhere. I spent nearly 3 hours parked outside a grocery store, watching strangers walk in and out, carrying flowers and cereal boxes and diapers while my entire marriage rotted inside my chest. I kept replaying the audio, over and over. That's when I noticed something I missed before. Music in the background, jazz, glasses clinking, restaurant noise. Then faintly, barely audible, a waiter's voice saying, "Your usual table." My stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd throw up. Usual. That one word destroyed me more than the kiss because it meant history, routine, a relationship old enough to have habits. I should have confronted her immediately. Any sane person would have. But betrayal does something strange to the human mind. Instead of exploding, I became calm, horribly calm. I needed to know everything, and that became my obsession. Over the next week, I started noticing details that once seemed invisible. Elena smiled differently when texting someone, softer, distracted, secretive. She started taking her phone everywhere, even the bathroom. She laughed at messages while sitting beside me on the couch, then immediately hid her screen if I glanced over. And yet somehow, she also became more affectionate toward me. That was the part that truly broke me. She made my favorite dinners, held my hand more often, kissed me randomly in hallways. Once she even surprised me with tickets to a concert I'd mentioned months earlier. It felt like she was trying to convince herself she still loved me while betraying me behind my back. One Friday night, we sat on the balcony drinking wine while rain rolled softly across the city skyline. Elena rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I miss us." The irony nearly killed me. "Miss us?" I wanted to scream. "You buried us." But instead, I stayed silent because part of me still needed answers. 3 days later, I followed her. I hated myself for it immediately. I parked across the street from her office, pretending to scroll through emails while sweat gathered beneath my jacket, despite the cold weather. At 5:43 p.m., she walked outside. And she wasn't alone. He was older than me, taller too, grey at the temples, Expensive coat, the kind of man who looked polished without trying. Elena smiled at him, in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not performative, not polite. Real, comfortable, intimate. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch. Somehow that hurt, even worse, because people deeply involved with each other don't need physical proof. The connection already exists in the air between them. I watched them walk into a small jazz bar together, while my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I sat outside for nearly an hour, imagining them inside, laughing together, while I slowly died alone in a parked car. That night I went home, before she did, and pretended everything was normal. When she walked through the door carrying Thai food and smiling casually, something inside me shifted permanently. I realized my wife had become a stranger wearing Elena's face. Weeks passed, then months. I found hidden emails eventually. Not explicit ones. Somehow that would have hurt less. Instead, they were emotional, deep, intimate. They talked about books and childhood memories and fears and dreams, things she stopped sharing with me years ago. At the bottom of one email she wrote, "Sometimes I think I met you at the wrong point in my life." I stared at that sentence for nearly 20 minutes. Wrong point in my life. Like I was simply bad timing. Like our marriage was just unfortunate scheduling. That night, I finally understood something devastating. She didn't cheat because she hated me. She cheated because somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me. I became background noise, stability, routine, safety. And another man became excitement, escape, desire. People think betrayal is about sex, but it isn't. Betrayal is about attention, about choosing where your emotional energy goes every day. And Elena had been giving hers to someone else for a very long time. The strange thing is, after enough pain, something inside you eventually numbs. The anger cooled first. Then the sadness dulled. Then came the worst part of all, indifference. I stopped asking where she went, stopped checking her expressions, stopped caring enough to investigate. And that terrified her. One evening she found me sitting alone on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "You've been distant lately," she whispered. I almost laughed out loud. Distant, like she finally noticed the house burning after everything already turned to ash. "What happened to us?" she asked quietly, tears gathering in her eyes. That question changed everything, because suddenly I understood something important. Guilt and love are not the same thing. A person can cry while destroying you. A person can miss you while betraying you. A person can love parts of you and still choose someone else repeatedly. Once I realized that, my marriage ended emotionally, even before I physically left. I stopped answering her texts immediately, stopped asking about her day, stopped reaching for her in bed. Silence became my revenge, and she noticed immediately. Suddenly she became nervous, clingy, emotional. She asked if I still loved her, asked if we needed therapy, asked if there was someone else. The irony nearly made me sick. One night she cried in the kitchen because I forgot to kiss her goodbye before work. Forgot. After months of calculated betrayal, she cried over a forgotten kiss. Humans are unbelievable creatures. The night before I left, Elena made dinner and played our wedding song softly through the apartment speakers. I think some part of her knew. We ate mostly in silence. Halfway through the meal, she reached across the table and whispered, "I feel like I'm losing you." And for the first time in months, I told her the truth. "You already lost me." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I'll never forget that expression. Shock, fear, guilt, confusion, like she suddenly realized consequences were real. I packed at 4 a.m. quietly while she slept. I took clothes, documents, my father's watch, and a novel she once gave me years earlier with a note inside saying, "No matter where life takes us, choose me." Funny enough, I almost laughed reading it. Before leaving, I wrote her a letter. Not angry, not cruel, just honest. I told her the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the lies, the way she looked into my eyes every day while building another life behind my back. I told her I hoped one day she learned that love cannot survive where honesty dies. Then I left the letter beside her coffee mug and walked out before sunrise. She called me 17 times that day. Then came the messages. Confusion first, then apologies, then desperation, then anger, then silence. Months later, I moved into a smaller apartment across town. Quiet place. No memories in the walls. Slowly, life became peaceful again. I started running in the mornings, started reading books instead of staring numbly at television screens, started sleeping through the night without hearing phantom versions of her voice in my head. Healing wasn't dramatic. It happened quietly, like sunrise. One Sunday morning, nearly a year later, I was standing inside a bookstore cafe, holding the world's driest blueberry muffin, when a woman behind me laughed softly and said, "Terrible choice." I turned around confused. She pointed at the muffin and smiled. "Trust me. Biggest disappointment in the building." I laughed for the first time in what felt like years. Real laughter. Easy. Human. We sat together drinking coffee for almost an hour, talking about books and travel and terrible music tastes. No games, no lies, no hidden phones face down on tables. Just honesty. And when she finally stood to leave, she looked at me carefully and said something I still think about sometimes. "You seem like someone learning how to breathe again." She had no idea how right she was, because that's what healing really is. Not forgetting the people who broke you, not pretending the pain never happened, but slowly becoming someone their betrayal no longer